Welcome to the Kenya Wantamnotam Movement, KWM podcast.
And welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are really getting into the core philosophy of the Kenya Wantamnotam Movement, or KWM. We've been looking at some of their foundational material, especially this really powerful piece called Poverty, the Price of Greedy Politics.
Right, and our mission today is to properly unpack that argument. It's such a strong stance. The idea that poverty isn't just an accident, or lack of resources. The sources are saying it's actually designed. It is systematically manufactured by political greed. We're going to get into the mechanics of how they say that works. And then most importantly, explore the KWM solution.
Which is this pretty radical idea of citizen-led local accountability.
Exactly.
What struck me right away is that this material doesn't treat corruption as some unfortunate side effect of bad policy.
No.
It treats corruption as the policy. It completely reframes how you think about development, about accountability, and really about what a nation's wealth even is.
And the claim that it really stopped me in my tracks was this. National integrity isn't some moral luxury. It is fundamentally an economic policy.
Yes.
And if you don't have it, they argue that is the direct #1 cause of poverty. It just flips the whole usual conversation on its head.
That reframing is the whole point. You're forced to look at poverty and not just see, an empty wallet, but to see the visible price tag for moral bankruptcy at the top. The sources give this almost surgical breakdown of how this greed actively creates and maintains poverty.
It sounds like a self-sustaining system.
It is. It's designed to keep cycles of dependency going, and the people are the collateral.
Okay, let's get into that blueprint then. Let's start with part 1. The anatomy of greedy politics. The source has this incredible phrase for it, the rot beneath the paint.
And that's such a perfect image. It starts by painting this picture of what happens when governance is just about self-service. National progress becomes theater.
Pure performance, right. You see it on the news. A politician announces some huge billion-dollar project. A new highway, a dam, something that gets a great headline.
Absolutely. But the person on the ground, the citizen, they know how this plays out. The projects either never get finished or they fail almost the second the cameras leave.
It's just for the photo op.
Completely. And the examples the source gives are so specific, they really stick with you. Think about a big road project. The ribbon is cut, there are speeches, but the road itself, which should last a decade, starts to crumble within 6 months.
Because the materials were wrong.
Exactly. The concrete mix was watered down, the foundation isn't deep enough. Every corner was cut specifically to siphon off the money.
And it's not just roads. The sources talk about essential services, like water projects.
Yeah, that one's heartbreaking. Millions are spent on pipes, but the taps stay dry. Always. Because the pump they installed was cheap and broke immediately, or, the last few kilometers of pipe were just never laid.
Or what about the health centers? A beautiful new building goes up.
But there's no medicine inside, no equipment, no doctors. The goal was never to deliver health care. The goal was to spend the construction budget.
The rot beneath the paint. That's it. From a distance, in a report somewhere in Nairobi, the project is marked complete.
90% complete, signed off, funds dispersed.
But the moment you, the citizen, try to actually use it, you find out it's a hollow shell, a monument to greed.
Which brings us to the engine of the whole system, the specific mechanisms of theft. And the source is so blunt about this. It says greedy politics works by seeing the public budget not as a tool for development, but as a feeding trough.
That is such a powerful and honestly disturbing image. So if the budget is a trough, how exactly does the theft work?
It's mainly through two things, budget inflation and rigged tenders. This is where it gets really disruptive. Let's say you need a specialized pump for a town's water supply. The real market price for a good one is, say, 10 million shillings.
Okay.
But the line item in the budget, the official cost, is written as 50 million. That extra 40 million isn't profit. It's not a mistake. It is premeditated theft, and it gets split between the contractor, the procurement guys, and the political boss who arranged the deal.
So the country pays 5 times more for an inferior product if they get one at all, and 80% of the money just vanishes.
Into thin air. And the contracts, of course, they don't go to the company that can do the best job. They go to the company that has the right political connections. And to make sure nobody ever finds out, they put their own loyalists on the oversight committees.
So the people who are supposed to be the watchdogs are in on it.
They're part of the same system. The reports get buried. The questions never get asked.
But surely people notice when nothing ever gets finished. Which I guess brings us to what the sources call The problem of continuity.
Yes, absolutely. The cycle of theft actually gets faster with instability. A new leader gets elected. First thing they do, they cancel all the old projects.
Even if some of them were actually working.
Especially if they were working. Because they don't do it because the old projects were bad. They do it to create new budget lines for their own schemes, for their own rigged tenders.
So there's no long-term planning at all.
None. The constant churn means nothing ever has a chance to actually succeed and benefit people. Think about it. If the old road works perfectly, you can't justify a brand new, massively inflated contract to repair it a year later.
They're literally sacrificing the country's future for short-term personal gain.
It's the entire model.
And this is where the analysis gets, for me, really alarming. It's what the KWM calls the debt weapon. The source argues that all these huge loans, the ones taken out in the name of progress,
The ones for all those theatrical projects we just talked about.
right, they vanish. Almost all of it goes into private bank accounts.
It's a terrifying economic truth. The loan is taken out for the people, but the money is immediately diverted. And the real pain, the real cost, hits years later when it's time to pay it back.
And who pays it back?
The citizens.
Yeah.
The very people who never saw a single benefit from that loan.
And they pay for it with new taxes, with inflation that makes their food more expensive, with unemployment because the money is going to service debt instead of creating jobs.
So the debt becomes this invisible chain. It links the daily struggles of a regular person directly to the greed of the politician who stole the money years ago.
The conclusion the KWM draws is just brutal.
Yeah.
The more the nation borrows like this, the poorer its people become.
It's a system of upward wealth transfer, guaranteed by the suffering of the next generation. And this infection, it doesn't stay in the government offices. It spreads, leading to what the source calls the collapse of the moral economy.
Because the system starts to punish honesty.
Actively. When leadership makes it clear that dishonesty is how you get rich, that corruption is rewarded, well, that virus spreads into the fabric of daily life.
It becomes normal. The source talks about a civil servant demanding a bribe, a facilitation fee, just to sign a simple document.
Or police officers collecting tea money instead of enforcing the law.
Right.
And then honest people can't compete. A small business owner has to either inflate their own invoices and pay the bribes, or they go out of business. They're forced into a system they hate just to survive.
The whole idea that hard work and integrity get you ahead is just shattered.
It's replaced by this deep cynicism that only connections matter. And that paralyzes everything. Every single transaction, from getting an ID card to starting a business, becomes a negotiation of guilt.
And that leads us straight into part 2. Manufacturing dependency and institutionalizing poverty. The sources make a direct link. Once integrity dies, patriotism dies with it, which results in what they call taxation as punishment.
It's about the social contract, right? That basic trust.
Yeah.
Citizens pay tax, and they expect to get something back: working services, safe roads, decent schools.
But when they see their money vanishing into what the source calls the black hole of corruption, that contract is broken.
Irrevocably. And you see the proof everywhere. The pothole that's been there for 5 years, the local clinic with no medicine. People just stop expecting the government to do anything. They learn to survive despite the system, not because of it.
And that leads to a huge economic problem. Tax evasion.
Of course. Why would you give your hard-earned money to a system you know is going to steal it? People think, quite logically, I'm better off keeping my money and paying for a private school or a private doctor.
So the state gets starved of the very funds it would need to fix things, even if it wanted to.
It's a vicious cycle. The corruption ensures the state can't provide services, which justifies not paying taxes, which means the state has even less money. Poverty becomes locked in.
And this political greed, it doesn't just steal money, it causes this massive economic suffocation.
It kills legitimate business. I mean, investors run away from that kind of uncertainty, and honest local companies, they simply can't compete.
The source gives an example of a qualified contractor, someone who does good work, who refuses to pay a bribe.
And they lose the tender every single time to a less qualified competitor who is willing to pay. So what's the incentive to be good at your job?
There is none. And the source argues this just suffocates innovation. You can't have new ideas, new businesses, when the whole environment is rigged.
So the country gets stuck. It's always a buyer of things from other countries, never a maker. Economic growth just stalls, and the gap between the rich and the poor becomes a chasm.
Which brings us to the most tragic outcome, the youth crisis.
This is where you see the long-term damage. You have Millions of educated, ambitious young people who look at this system and see no future for themselves. Merit means nothing.
So they look for a way out.
The brain drain, the doctors, the engineers, the IT specialists, they leave. And you can't blame them, but it robs the country of its future.
And the source is clear. This isn't an accident. This is poverty being institutionalized by design. If all the legitimate paths are blocked, young people are forced into crime or migration or just despair.
And there's a cynical logic to it all. The source says greed is used as a tool for political control. Leaders actually maintain their power by keeping people desperate.
That's the handouts versus development point. Instead of building something sustainable, like a college that empowers people for life,
They'll show up during an election with a truck of food or small cash handouts, these little temporary gifts.
why?
Because sustainable development makes people independent. And independent people don't need the politician anymore. They start asking questions. They start demanding accountability.
The source has a chilling line about this. It says, the hungry are easier to silence.
And that's the strategy. A population that's worried about where their next meal is coming from doesn't have the time or energy to organize and challenge the system. Dependency is a political tool.
And that tool is backed up by the final institutional collapse, the erosion of justice and merit.
This is when the rule of law just becomes a joke. The courts are supposed to punish corruption, but instead they protect the powerful. That's justice for sale.
You see it happen. A powerful politician is accused of stealing millions.
And the case just drags on for years. Files go missing, witnesses change their stories. It just fades away. Meanwhile, a poor person who steals a chicken goes to jail immediately.
That double standard sends the clearest possible message.
It says that crime pays. As long as you're powerful enough, it encourages more theft at the top.
And at the same time, you have the death of merit. Public jobs, especially in those big state-owned companies, the parastutals,
The ones that run the electricity, the ports, the water, the lifeblood of the economy.
those jobs don't go to the most qualified person. They go to friends, relatives, political loyalists.
And that's catastrophic. You put someone incompetent in charge of the national power company because they're loyal to you, and suddenly the power grid becomes unreliable. Blackouts become normal. The whole economy suffers.
So every institution, from schools to hospitals to the Port Authority, is weakened because expertise has been replaced by loyalty.
The country gets poorer not because it lacks talented people, but because the system actively sidelines them in favor of political connections.
Okay, so the picture is bleak, but the KWM philosophy is all about the solution. So let's move to part 3. The cure reclaiming power through local accountability. And the first step, they say, is confronting the danger of silence.
Right. The source is absolutely clear on this. Poverty and corruption grow fastest where good people watch and say nothing.
And that silence comes from fear, or from being bought off with those small favors we talked about.
And it leads to this culture of resignation. People just give up. The moral outrage fades. A scandal that would have rocked the country 10 years ago is now just another Tuesday. It becomes normal.
And the politicians love that.
They exploit it. They use the ultimate distraction. They stir up tribal or ethnic divisions, get people blaming each other, fighting each other, so they never look up and unite against the real enemy, the corrupt system itself.
So breaking that silence is the turning point, the KWM turning point. The source says recovery only begins when one thing changes.
When integrity becomes more valuable than influence.
And when leaders start to fear the law more than they fear losing an election, that shift in fear is everything.
A clean government, they argue, is the best economic stimulus package you could ever have. It attracts investment, it restores dignity, and it breaks the poverty cycle not with foreign aid, but with honest governance.
Which brings us to the core action plan, the KWM strategy, change from the ground up. And this is the part that I think will really resonate with listeners. The movement completely rejects the idea that change has to start in Nairobi.
They say it loud and clear. Wrong. It begins where you live.
It's a total decentralization of accountability.
It is. The idea is simple but powerful. When you start sharing what's actually happening in your village, whether it's a failed road in Turkana or a great new market in Makwini.
Or a stalled project in Kisumu.
Yes. When all those stories come together, patterns emerge. You start to see it's the same tricks, the same hands everywhere.
And that's where accountability starts. Not with a big report in Parliament, but with ordinary people just refusing to be fooled anymore.
And so the role for the listener is very direct. Share your story. What's happening in your area? What's not happening that was promised? Is there someone doing a good job? Name them. Is there someone who only shows up at election time? Name them too.
And the instruction is simple. Tell it as it is. No filters, no spin. The idea is that your one post can be the thing that wakes up your neighbor. And that's how a movement grows.
Which gets to the platform's purpose. They stress that this isn't another news site. It's a people's record.
A permanent record.
Exactly. Every comment, every post about a ghost project or a successful clinic, it forms a trail. And that's a trail that no spin doctor can erase. When you post, you're not just complaining, you are documenting history.
And to make it easy, the platform have all 47 counties listed. You just find your area and start sharing. You share the problems, you share the ideas. You build the record for your village, your city, your nation.
It's about aggregating all those local truths into one undeniable national picture.
This feels like a good point to pause and tell people how they can actually get involved. So what does all this mean for you listening right now? If this resonates, if you want to be part of documenting this move toward integrity, we really encourage you to join the Kenya Wantamnotam movement. Go to www.wantamnotam.com and create your account. It's that simple. Find your county and start posting.
And you can also find a lot more resources and join the conversation on their Facebook page, https://www.facebook.com/KK Health Hand Wealth Consulting. It's clear the message is that the time for just watching is over. It's time to document.
Right. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back to the central theme, the big takeaway. Poverty is not destiny.
The KWM philosophy could not be more emphatic about this. Poverty isn't a mystery. It's not a curse. It is the direct result of moral bankruptcy in leadership. It is manufactured.
And you can draw a straight line from the corruption to the suffering. Behind every hospital that doesn't have medicine, there's an inflated contract. Behind every unemployed graduate, there's a job that was given to a political ally instead of the best candidate.
Which means the path to prosperity is also clear. It's not complicated. Economic success requires just a few things: trust, predictable rules, and reliable institutions that work for everyone.
You can't just throw aid money at a broken system. You have to fix the foundation, which is integrity.
And the source's final thought just ties it all together so perfectly. It says, integrity in politics isn't charity. It isn't a nice to have. It is economic policy. Prosperity only grows where truth governs.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener. The source claims that recovery happens when leaders fear the law more than they fear losing an election. So the question for you is this: how can this people's record, this documentation of truth from all 47 counties, become the very thing that instills that crucial fear? What patterns, what undeniable truth will emerge when everyone starts documenting the failures and the successes in a way that can never be hidden again? Don't just listen to the analysis, join the action. Visit www.wantamnotam.com and create your account. Start documenting your county's truth today. Thank you for listening to the Kenya Wantamnotam Movement KWM podcast.